To us, magic sounds like this extraordinary thing, pulling a rabbit out of the hat, coming out of nowhere. But it's here, it's real, and the more that we are open to the unseen, to the energies of this world, to abundance and manifesting, to calling in and growing, the more we'll be able to call magic into our lives. Join me as I share stories, wisdom, and curiosity around connecting with your higher frequency, tapping into the synchronicities of the universe, and opening up to the unseen possibilities that this world has to offer. I am your host, Dayna Faye, and this is the Ordinary Magic Podcast. I am going to tell the story about my spiritual awakening and the process of connecting more and more with the unseen, and just explaining what a spiritual awakening is through my own story. I was in my mid-20s. I decided to move abroad and work in Germany. I was an au pair, which is like a nanny that lives in a home with the family. It's an exchange. That's when my world started to open up a little bit more. I started to just be exposed to new things. Of course, I was in a different country. I was in a new culture. I remember that year was the first year ever where I didn't wear makeup that summer. My entire life, I covered my freckles on my face extremely well because I was always so insecure about all the dots on my face. And when I was in Germany, I got this clean slate to be anyone that I wanted to be. Nobody knew me yet. And I was hanging out with people who didn't wear as much makeup. And summer came around and I was taking care of kids and I just decided not to put makeup on my face. And even though this sounds like a silly story, it was such a huge lesson for me that summer to not care what other people think of me, and that it depends on who you surround yourself with in regards to what you feel like doing or what you feel comfortable with. And that summer, it was not a big deal. My friend group was not caking on their makeup. I could just be free and just a bare face. That's just one example of living abroad and realizing that I can start to choose for myself who I am and who I want to be. I don't need to listen to what other people are telling me, this, you're really good at this, do that. I'm not looking for that external validation anymore. I'm asking myself, who are you? What do you want to be? What do you want to do with your life? So I lived in Germany for a year. Then I lived in Australia for a while. And then, so back to Germany. That's a long story for another podcast, but I was abroad for 2 years. And during those 2 years, my dad was still fighting his battle with cancer. And our parents always really encouraged us to continue on with our lives. And that's what I did. Maybe that was also just easier than going home and being reminded of just how sick my father was. He was diagnosed with cancer when I was a freshman in college. And I remember it like yesterday in my dorm room, Googling this type of cancer because I had never heard of it before. And it said life expectancy 2 years, which was just insane. But I got all the way through college and he was still fighting this disease and doing well sometimes and sometimes not. And our parents just really pushed us to continue on. And so after 1 year in an office at a computer being absolutely miserable, I decided to Google how to move to Germany only knowing English. And this au pair thing came up. I was like, oh my gosh, like free house and stay and a small income every month to like see Germany, which is my ancestry and is a country that actually my dad was super interested in and had been to before. Yes, please. So I picked a family, I moved abroad, and that was such a year of lessons, of meeting new people. During all the school breaks, I traveled by myself to other neighboring countries, and it felt so liberating. It was just me. I couldn't even understand what people were saying around me if they were speaking a language I didn't understand. And that felt really freeing. It was my world. And this is when my consciousness started to kick in a little bit, like, whoa, there's a bigger world out here, and my problems are seemingly pretty small. So I was trying to stay in Germany, but things weren't really lining up. And I actually had a very straightforward German friend say to me, I don't think you really want to stay here because you would have made it work by now. And it hit me. I needed to hear that. He was right. I think there was some intuition inside me that said, it's time to go home. It's time to be with my family. So I flew home for one of my best friend's bachelorette parties in Chicago, caught a ride with another one of my best friends to Madison, and started living with her and working at her coffee shop, and just started to put some roots down in Madison, Wisconsin. That summer, my dad was declining in health. He had been through so many treatments, everything you can name in regards to a cancer patient. And his body just, you could tell he's just had enough. He was really fighting because we wanted him around. Literally the day after he was diagnosed, he told me when I was visiting him, I've lived such an amazing life. Even if I died today, I got to have a family, build a business, watch you guys grow up. He had a dear friend that passed away way too early in his early 20s. And so in my dad's eyes, comparing that to one of his best friends from high school, he already lived a full life. So yeah, his health was declining that summer. I was at the airport in Chicago, about to fly to California for an event. And I got the call from my sister, and she said, don't get on the plane. They had made the decision. Per my dad's request, his only dying request was to die in his bed. So the doctors were sending him home. I was hopped on a bus to Milwaukee. A really dear friend of mine drove me from Milwaukee back home that day. That began the process of his hospice. What a wild ride. I had I've never experienced this before, watching a loved one die. And I would say that I was still not at a very high conscious state at that point. And so there's a lot of regrets that I have, and maybe I'll save that for another podcast, but I wish I would have been more present. I wish I would have been more vulnerable, and I wish I would have spoken my emotions and feelings to him instead of just holding back and being more of the witness over those next few days, rather than being more direct with him and more vulnerable. So over the next couple days, we had family coming in and out. We had friends visiting. He was laying in his bed, just slowly dying, not eating. 4 days in, it was just my mom, my sister, and my brother and I. When we woke up, we were kind of in the kitchen, and my parents' bedroom was off the kitchen. And we were in the kitchen actually complaining, being like, this could be, 6 days or 3 weeks. We have no idea. Like, we have work to get back to, and we have to prepare for the funeral. And then through that conversation, our little dog came out of my parents' bedroom and kind of looked really sad and just laid under the table. And our conversation went silent, and my mom seemed really sad all of a sudden. And she's like, oh my goodness, this is like the first time I'm really starting to break down, and I don't know. And she said, I'm going to go in by Randy. She went into his room, and he had already passed, but just passed. So she called us in, and we went in there, and we were like, wow, that's why the dog walked out of the room and looked so sad. Bear, our dog, knew that my dad had just passed. And we shared that quiet moment together. And that was really incredibly beautiful, that our family, our immediate family, happened to be the only ones there. And that, like I've heard many stories before, he chose to pass when no one was really around, but we were. He was hearing us from the kitchen. That experience alone was absolutely life-changing. And it shook my world, and it shook, of course, everyone's world. My sister, my brother, my mom, extended family, his parents. We all knew that day was coming, but nobody was ready for it. And he was such a fighter. So we had the most amazing, amazing funeral for him, just packed with people. And I sang, and my sister did the most beautiful eulogy. And it just was like a wonderful day. Then I drove back to Madison and went back to my life. And that kind of started this contemplation and this search for what happens when someone dies. And I immediately believed that I could connect with him. I immediately believed that I could connect with him. In fact, I don't think this was the exact day, but there was one time I was riding with my sister and I was like, oh my God, can you smell dad's breath? Like I totally like, there are some mediums who have a huge like sense of smell. That's how they connect to people. And she like leaned over and was like, Dayna, that's your breath. So anyway, I immediately, for some reason, just knew in my heart of hearts that I would be able to connect to my dad after he passed over. And I immediately wanted to. I continued on my journey over that next year. It was pretty uneventful. But I think about a year later, so when I was 26, I started working at a new gym as a personal trainer and met some friends who were also Reiki attuned. They were Reiki practitioners. And Reiki is a modality that uses hands-on energetic healing. So they were channeling love energy from the universe to help heal people. I'm on this Reiki table with a Reiki practitioner, and they are doing the Reiki, and they also received channeled messages while they're doing the Reiki. So they would write down on a piece of paper like the messages that were coming through. And somehow I was able to calm my mind on that table, and I ended up going into kind of a sleep situation. It was like I was half awake, but half asleep. And it was almost like I was in this dream state. And all of a sudden, I was back in my 5th grade red dress that I wore for my first singing recital. I was that 5th grade girl in the red dress. I could see it like yesterday. And I was sitting at a piano and I was playing piano. And while I was in this dream state, I was hearing the music that I was playing. It was absolutely beautiful. It wasn't just piano. Like it was a full-on song. It was beautiful. And I was sitting there playing and my dad was there with me and he was dancing. Time felt like it stopped when I was in this dream state, when I was on the table. I really don't understand how long or short that was, but it felt like I was there for a really long time. Just sitting at the piano playing while my dad danced near me. And it was more like this feeling of just being with the music and with this absolute joyful and love emotion. Like this, just as if sadness, despair, melancholy didn't even exist. Like it was just, we were just in the music feeling so light and happy and joyful, and like we had no worries in the world. So at the end of the Reiki session, my practitioner said, okay, we're done. And I came out of my dreamlike state and I said, oh my gosh, was my dad here? I like totally felt my dad. He was dancing or something. My practitioner got out the sheet of paper that they write on and had written on the paper, your dad is here. He's dancing. He's having so much fun. And there was a million messages from him on that paper, front and back, to me, things he wanted to say to me. And I actually dug up the papers. I saved them, and I didn't realize I did a little journal afterwards too and saved it. He said, step into your confidence, step into your grace, step into your power, and behold and be you. Always be you. Never sacrifice what you know deep down to be true for the sake of complacency. Always be you. Never sacrifice what you know deep down to be true. You know what you know. All you need to know is already within you. Hearing that message again today feels so good. This is the entire purpose of my podcast, to remind myself that I hold the key to already knowing what I know. It's already within me. I received those messages from him. So I journaled after that session, and I want to read one part that I thought was nice. And I said, I know without a doubt yesterday that was him. I hope to practice being more aware of him when he is around. I just smile at the thought that he is hanging out with us completely healthy and whole. I bet it all feels so new to him, but he's keeping that positive dad jokes vibe. That experience, what I would call a very metaphysical experience, was the start of my spiritual awakening and my journey to wanting to connect more and more with the unseen. My journey to having this inner knowing that there's more to this life than what we can just see in our 3D reality. It wasn't always an easy journey. I was wanting to connect with him more and more, and my ego mind would come in and nothing would work and he wouldn't be there. And I worked with other Reiki practitioners as well. And finally, one of them said to me, "Why do you want to connect with him so badly?" And I said, "Because I miss him." And she had to remind me he's gone. His earth self is gone. His soul is here and he has some work to do. And even though he's always with me, he's, doing 1,000,001 other things, and I don't always need to call upon him. And that was really nice to hear about. I think that was around 2 years after he passed away. So it was the right timing in my grieving to go, yeah, you're right. What I already know is within me. I don't need to call upon my dad for everything, even if I think this is super cool and nerd about the metaphysical connection of it. All spiritual awakenings are very different. Not all of them start with something tragic, although many do. But I think one common thread is that it's a really slow awakening, and some things are subtle and some things are really obvious. But throughout the next couple years, I would just have random things happen that was clear that it was connected more to the universe than just this 3D reality. And one of those was I had a new job where I had to travel after he passed away, and I got a flat tire with my coworker, like in the middle of a different state. I can't even remember which state. And we were like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And this sweet older man came out of nowhere and changed our tire for us. And I just knew inside me that he was a really nice person who stopped to help us change our tire. And we got talking. I had told him my dad recently passed away, which sounds crazy. When he was done changing the tire, he gave me this big hug, this big bear hug. And for something that we're conditioned in society to feel like, okay, changing a tire, like that's something I would have called my dad for. And then this person came to me who was like a dad-like figure, helped us with no problem, and gave me this hug. Literally felt like my dad was hugging me. That was him working through him, without a doubt. Sometimes these things are really subtle. A couple years down the road, my husband and I were in Costa Rica, and we were about to go on this white river rafting trip, and it was kind of scary and dangerous, and we were both a little nervous. And right as I was like putting my life jacket on, I had this craziest feeling that went through my body, like an electric charge, like almost like as if someone cracked an egg on top of my head, and then it like melted down my back. And I knew in a minute, I said out loud, we're going to be fine. Like, my dad's here, we're going to be fine. And that entire trip, I felt like my dad was looking through my eyes, because it was the most beautiful, out of this world nature and landscape that I have ever seen. And knowing that my dad loved nature, I just knew that he was with us that day. He wanted to be with us. He wanted to watch over us, make sure we were safe, but he also wanted to see how incredibly beautiful this place was, a place that he never got to see when he was on Earth. So as I went about kind of unraveling these new experiences and trying to connect more, I would do things like Reiki. I got Reiki attuned. I would work on meditating, although I'll be the first to admit that I'm not that great at sitting still for a long time. I would, do journal writing where you like connect with your higher self and ask questions and just see what flows out of your hand. I've read books about channeling, about the chakra system, connecting to your energetic centers. You name it, I've tried it. Although I have to say, I can think of a million things I want to try yet. So to be continued. And that's all out of curiosity, of connecting to the unseen and the unknown, and raising my consciousness to a point where I can connect to the deceased, where I can connect to souls and spirits, people who did live on Earth, or maybe people who've never lived here, but are just my guides, my angels, my team. And throughout the last couple years, I've really done just that. I sit in meditation, I journal, I literally talk to my guides. Some people may call that God. Some people call it the universe. Some like to get to know all their guides and find names for them. But to me, they're my guides. I have my guides and my higher self and my loved ones who have passed over. And my ancestors too. My great grandmas have started coming to me, which is really cool. It's like a muscle. The more I try to connect and work with these energies, the more I'm able to. And just a couple months ago, I was taking a walk through the little woods that's by our house. And I was having a day. Starting out my business is not always easy. I was at first quietly talking out loud to my guides. And then I decided to talk out loud to my dad and try to connect with him. And I hadn't done that in a long time. And I just said, Dad, can you please just give me a message around what I'm doing here with my business? Like, if this is correct, I'm getting a lot of, it's stressful. Can you just give me a message around where I'm headed with the different things that I'm doing, I'm trying to create and bring out into this world? And I actually got my first ever claircognizant hit. And a claircognizant hit is like where you have a knowing. And he actually gave me an image. He brought out this image of this tractor that he turned into like a snowplow, but he also added a bell onto it, like a real bell, not electronic, where if the tractor is going backwards, the string of the bell pulls and like the bell rings. I would have never thought about this tractor again in my life. Never, ever, ever. This was such a clear psychic hit. I saw the tractor and I immediately had a knowing of the words that he said to me. And he said, I was weird too. Nobody understood me. Do it anyway. It was just the coolest thing in the world. And let me tell you, I haven't gotten one since. So I haven't figured it out yet on how to continue to channel. I received that message. I received the image. I had the knowing. He talked to me like telepathically, however this works. It's real. It's here. We can connect to people who are passed over. And if you're not comfortable doing it yourself, there's so many people who are mediums or can connect. And it really does help the grieving process, but it also helps us live here on earth. Now I'm able to connect with my guides, my higher self, my dad, these people who I'm going to tell them a story. They're not going to go tell Susie down the road my business. They're not here. They're here in energetic form, in spirit form, and they're here for us. And, I received some messages from my dad through a medium. This was at least half a year ago that, one of his jobs in spirit form is to help people with just starting out their business. So he said he's going to be here kind of like the bookkeeper helping me out, but to let me know that he helps everyone at the beginning of their businesses. That's his job, which I found so interesting because I remember him having a conversation with a boy from my grade, my school, when he was just starting out trying to create a business for himself shortly after we graduated. I remember my dad coming into the house and being so excited and lit up that this guy wanted to start his own business and that he came to my dad for some advice. And so to hear that my dad's doing that now in spirit form it's just incredibly cool. And through the times that I've communicated with him, whether that is through a medium who has more powers than I do at this moment or through myself, he's his true, authentic soul self. He's not like Randy, like how Randy was as a human, but he like still cracks jokes and like is still funny and spirited. And it's just so exciting. I mean, I hope you can hear this in my voice. I'm nerding out about the fact that we can do this. Some of this magic is real, but we have to put in the work. We have to connect. We have to call upon it. We have to quiet our mind enough. We have to get into our body enough to bring that information, that energy up from the earth, to bring that information and energy down from the solar system, from the sky, from the planets, from the sun, from all the souls, all the energy out there. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It's out there and we're able to tap in, and it's so exciting. And that is the story of my spiritual awakening. It started with my father passing away. It started with a hard time in my life, 25 years old. My dad died. It started with me wanting to connect and going down the road of like, what's real? I was raised Catholic my whole life, but yet we weren't ever taught to actually we weren't taught that prayer is actually energetic and can actually call things in and like put the energy out there. We weren't taught that. So I went down this road of like, whoa, we don't just have a physical body, we have an energetic body. We can connect with things. What does that mean? Okay, I'm going to get Reiki attuned. Okay, I'm going to learn yoga. Okay, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to play around with my chakras. Which one's loud? Which one's quiet? Which one can I feel? Can I feel the top of my head, my crown chakra? Am I connecting to my higher self? What are my dreams like? Does something come into my dreams? I mean, sky's the limit here. I love nerding out about it, and I love that this podcast is going to bring me a platform to do just that, but to also bring people on this journey with me because it can be a lonely one. I know it can, especially for the longest time, I've been insecure about being into this stuff. I've been insecure and not owning the fact that I think it's 100% real and that this is something I'm interested in. And even though I'm now a human design teacher and I can see in my chart that the gate of mystery is in my chart, how many more times does something have to hit me over the head to say, Dayna, you are meant to connect with spirit. You are meant to channel. You are meant to work with the energetic body. So do it. Own it. Be you, because the only person not being happy when you're not you is you. I would give anything for my dad to still be here, especially now that I have a daughter. But his passing away changed my timeline. It shifted something at me. It sent me on a different direction than maybe where I would have been had he still been here. And both are beautiful. I would take both. I urge you to think about if maybe you're walking through a spiritual awakening. If you're walking through something that's raising your consciousness, that's bringing you aware of yourself, your 3D self, but also your 5D, your higher consciousness, your energetic body. Are you all of a sudden paying attention to the full moon and going, oh my God, yeah, shit hits the fan when the full moon is out? A spiritual awakening doesn't have to hit you over the head. It can be slow, and you may not even realize you're in it until you're 7 years down the road. What I'm really excited about is that human design helps you speed up the process of your spiritual awakening. It helps you read your energetic body. It shows you where your intuition is and where you might best pull that connection with the universe from, or that ability to connect with your guides or use your intuition or channel. Human design is such a cool tool that it's almost like a cheater. Like, okay, here's the map for you, at least. Here's your gifts. Here's your expression. Here's kind of the life theme that you're meant to go on. Now, what do you want to do with it? In true 2023 form, I asked ChatGPT what a spiritual awakening is because I was curious. I can explain it in my own words, but I'll read what it says. A spiritual awakening is a profound shift in consciousness that can lead to a significant change in a person's perspective on life, self-awareness, and the understanding of the world. It is often described as a process of becoming aware of one's true nature, purpose, and a connection to a higher power or universal energy. There's like 3 more paragraphs that are absolutely amazing. So just go in, type "what is a spiritual awakening" and read it for yourself. But I really loved that last part. And a connection to a higher power or universal energy. We are all connected to each other. We are all connected to the universe and to people who have passed on, to our ancestors, and to other beings of light and energy, and even shadow and darkness that are out there. And the more awareness we can bring around it, the more we can connect with the higher frequencies and bring more joy and excitement and magic into our lives. I really enjoyed talking about my story today. It feels really good to come out of the spiritual closet, not have dogma around it, not shy away, and also normalize it. Like, I'm going on with my normal life, working with my real estate clients, doing this podcast, working with my human design clients. And it doesn't all have to be laced in the connection to the universe, but that is your tool in your back pocket that you can use if you so choose. Thank you so much. Ordinary Magic is a Lit Path Studios podcast and is produced by Jamie Gale and Dayna Faye. Music is by Shane Ivers. Until next time, I wish you many powerful moments of ordinary magic.